everyone. Hey, congratulations for this documentary, Periodical.
Thank you.
Such a wonderful documentary, but more of a congratulations that it is showcased at the South by Southwest festival, which I believe you just had your premiere last night. How did that go?
Ladies, how did it go? I was too excited.
It went really well. Yeah, it was great. It was really fun. The audience responded really, really well. It was everything we wanted. There was laughter. There was frustration. There were, everyone was really moved, and that's the way it should be, because the film is it's a really powerful film.
Terrific. Well, I'm glad all of you had fun last night, and there's still a couple more showings for Periodical at South by Southwest. So that's terrific to hear. So let's ask that obligatory question of, like, for many documentary filmmakers, is what sparked you to make this documentary in the first place?
Great question. It was 2016, I think, and I was sitting in a supermarket eating some broccoli salad and writing a diary, as I do, and I ended up writing a little poem, little ode to women, because I love women, and we are so powerful and strong, and we do a lot of things. And I realized, wow, and we bleed. And wait, we kind of don't know much about why we bleed, what happens when I'm bleeding, what happens when I'm ovulating. I realized, wait a minute, we don't know so many things about our cycle. We don't know so many things about how our bodies work. Let's take a look at this. Let's kind of zoom in. What's going on here? And I started looking at what's happening in the landscape of menstruation. And I realized that not only not much was known scientifically, but also that there was a budding movement happening in which there were menstrual activists. There were people breaking the barriers, breaking the ceilings, educating one another about menstruation and how maybe we should know things about it. And so that started me into a rabbit hole, and I was like, this is a fascinating movement. I see all these badass women running marathons, free bleeding, teaching young girls in schools about ovulation, which is in itself a revolutionary act, believe it or not, in our school system. So I was just curiouser and curiouser, and myself learned a lot about my cycle as I was going along. And so then I brought this idea for the project about everything about menstrual cycle to XTR production company. And then we knocked on Amanda Spain's door, and she said, fuck yeah. And then we just, we embarked.
That's actually exactly what I said.
Yes. And then we embarked on this journey of 13 months in which we followed our two wonderful heroines, Anusha and Madeleine, as they were flipping one of the states that still had this crazy tax. Believe it or not, it's called pink tax, menstrual tax, a tax that for some reason taxes menstrual supplies as items that are not quite necessary. Toilet paper never taxed, necessary, everybody needs to wipe. But tampons, not quite necessary. So let's give them 9% tax. Wait a minute, that's kind of funky. And so Anusha and Madeleine were embarking on the journey to flip the Michigan, and they're doing multiple states. And we decided to follow specifically Michigan for our film as kind of a through journey. And I say the rest is history.
Amanda, can you add on how your involvement as executive producer and the film companies, I believe MSNBC Films was backing this project?
Yeah, it is sort of in the same, it's exactly like Lina described, actually. The XTR sent me, I don't know if the sizzle was about 5 minutes. And the minute I saw it, I was immediately, and I was only on the job. I'd only been at MSNBC Films for like 2 weeks. So it was one of the first things that came to me. And I remember when I saw it, I immediately felt this thing in my body, like, this has to be done. We have to be the ones who do it. And I remember being a little trepidatious because I was new to MSNBC Films, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the head here, go to the president, Rashida Jones, and be like, I want to do this film. And like, I wasn't totally sure how she was going to respond. And of course I showed her the piece that had been sent to me, and she was as enthusiastic as I was. And we came on board, and it's been so fun. I mean, it's one of those films that it was cool in its concept, but it's even better in its delivery. Like, the film is badass. It is a badass film. It is a film that all humans need to see, because it is really one of those films that I am a 47-year-old woman. I didn't know most of the stuff that's in this film. And I consider myself, pretty well read. So if I don't know most of the stuff in this film, I'm going to assume most women and men and non-binary people don't know most of the stuff in this film. So it is one of those films that I am now on the, I was like thinking today, I was like, we need to start a movement. We need to start a movement with this film. This film needs to get a lot of people behind it, because I swear once people see it, it'll be like one of those films that's like, oh, this has got to be in every school. It's got to be everywhere, because it really genuinely feels that important. And I'm not just saying that because we're the distributor. I mean it. Like, it's heartfelt. This film feels that important to me.
Well, I'm a 48-year-old man, and this is my third coverage of a period documentary, and I still have no idea.
Good for you, though, by the way.
Good for you.
Anusha, Madeleine, how are you approached by these documentary filmmakers, and why did you agree to, or how did they convince you to agree to be a participant in this documentary?
Oh my goodness. I think I met Lina when I was 18 or 19 years old at an event backstage. And I remember that time I was really getting into organizing. I was a full-time college student, and I remember I was co-leading the first ever National Period Day campaign. And I remember meeting Lina backstage with her like camera and raving about, the first ever National Period Day. And we were so excited about it. And it was in 2019. I remember that time I was like, oh wow, we're going to face so much pushback. And, because it hadn't been done before. And I was so like excited. And I was like telling Lina all about it. And then, fast forward several years later, Lina is like, hey, because kept up with my advocacy work on social media, because, Gen Z loves to post about, what we're doing on socials. And so, that really helps build our movement and everything too. So, several years later, we collaborated on this and worked on repealing the tax in Michigan. And that was the state that we focused on for that film. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback right off of you. I was fortunate enough to become involved with the film because of Anusha, actually. I had been doing a lot of legal advocacy work in this realm. I'm not yet a lawyer. Key operative word is yet. I am going to law school in the fall. But I had done some petitioning, collaborating with the iconic Laura Strassfeld. And then I began switching my hat from just legal activism to also grassroots activism. And I became involved with Anusha in co-organizing National Period Action Day in Michigan. She then introduced me to Lina and the rest of the production team, and the rest is history. I was very excited to become involved in the documentary because I felt that the documentary served as a way to amplify the menstrual justice movement's voice. Not only is it incredibly informational, factual, and empowering, but it really sends a message to people to destigmatize menstruation in general. And that's the first step towards any advocacy journey, is that destigmatization. So once the destigmatization can happen, then a lot of positive policy work can happen. So I was excited to be involved in any way I could be.
Wow, that sounds terrific. Then, Amanda, how did you find the other subjects to be interviewed for this documentary? We got Anusha's and Madeleine's story, but there's a lot of women that you actually presented here in this film.
Yeah, it took from the idea to South by premiere, it took 6 years to make this film. So it was a both slow and a rapid filmmaking journey. And there are some people who have worked in menstrual activism, menstrual care for decades, and my goal in the film was to connect as many dots in the menstrual activism, menstrual landscape, and to showcase and celebrate as many of those people who do the wonderful menstrual work. For example, Kiran Gandhi ran a marathon free bleeding in 2015. And I remember reading about that in maybe 2017. She's also a wonderful musician, was MIA's drummer, and is just fantastic creator and a wise woman. So I was like, we must have her in the film. I know Amanda always loved Kiran Gandhi. She was always, so I filmed with Kiran when I did a little teaser way before the film was even born. Then Amanda was always rooting for Kiran's presence in the film. So then we filmed Kiran. And then when we started editing, we were like, what if Kiran would compose music for our film? And she did. So it was one of those wonderful moments where you get to weave personal stories, amazing talents, and a huge passion for menstruation in many levels in this film, from behind the camera to the in front of the camera. Everybody is or loving menstruation or hating their own menstruation or wanting to learn more about the cycle. Nobody's, neutral in the film, which is a fun part.
And I think what Lina did really well was take this sort of tapestry of voices. And, you've got women that you will absolutely recognize, like Naomi Watts and Gloria Steinem and Megan Rapinoe. And then you've got women who, are not as recognizable, just, women and men and non-binary people who are just testifying to their own things. And what's so great about how she interweaves these stories is that it really makes it feel how common it is that we're all experiencing the same things. Like Naomi Watts is having the same conversation that like I'm having. And that's something that's really, in some ways comforting. It's comforting to see other women share their stories and other people share their stories so that we can all feel like we're not so alone. And I thought that Lina just did a really good job of making sure that there were enough diverse voices. And I mean, diverse in all ways. I mean, the age diversity in this film is honestly something you don't really see very often. And that to me is like, I'm very proud of what she did with that, because it's like Gen Zers to boomers. And having a common conversation together and not actually talking about each other in negative ways, but actually talking about each other in ways that is common to our own experience, because a boomer woman has lived the life and a Gen Z woman knows what's coming. If they can listen to a boomer, they can hear what's coming. And if a boomer can hear that what's Gen Z is teaching us, I mean, the world is just going to get better. The more we have that intergenerational conversation, I mean, that's what we're all striving for, I think. So
most excellent. One of the biggest questions for a documentary like this, I know like 20 years ago, people don't like to talk about this type of subject. I mean, it'll be hard to destigmatize a subject and get people to talk to. I mean, I can't personally vouch or experience the same thing as you ladies have. My only experience is when I had an ex-roommate who sent me out to Walgreens at 2 a.m. and then to buy her tampons. And I have no idea what's the difference between everything. All I remember was it was expensive. And I do remember that the sales tax was tacked on. I was going, what? How much this thing costs? But anyways, what's the best way to actually approach to carry a conversation about something like this, and who is the audience for something like this? Who wants the answer?
Great question. I think we answered the first question, which is how do you speak about such a film in the very beginning of the film. We are just immediately bloody but beautiful without disguising it, without covering it in the niceties, without down there and I need to go to the bathroom, but I don't know why, I can't tell you why. No, we're here to speak about periods. We're here to speak about flow. We're here to speak about a vital sign that our body produces, and we love that. So it's like we knew that there is no skirting around the subject in the documentary like this. And we wanted to kind of leave no stone unturned, but we also wanted to walk the middle line in which we get to discover the science behind it. We get to discover anthropological view, and also speak a little bit of a spirituality, to dip a little bit into holistic, and then come back to the science. So we try to not to disparage anybody, whether you're on the pill and that's your choice, or whether you're, putting your menstruation into the full moon, to the Mother Earth. We kind of try to cover all of the conversations that exist there for menstruation. And more importantly, for me personally, was we tried to be really loud, unapologetic, and real, especially about perimenopause. Because yes, menstruation is still taboo in some parts of United States, but I think we are really close to breaking that taboo. Perimenopause is still kind of the last bastion, I think, in the unmentionables, in the what we call in the film the reverse teenage years, in which there's a whole another world we're going through when our ovaries start to close shop. And so the fact that we did speak about it, and we did get Naomi Watts to talk about her experience, for me was such a great win for a lot of us, because all of us will go through it, and the louder and more normal we are about it, the better for everybody. That was a big deal.
I think to your question about who the audience is, I think it's really important that everyone's the audience. This is one of those films that this is not a film for women. Women are absolutely the audience, don't get me wrong, but this is a film for everyone. I have two sons, 11 and 7. I'm absolutely going to make them watch this film. So I think it's really important that this conversation is had across the board, because the reason we feel shame is often because it's siloed to just us. And we have to open up the conversation. This film does it really well. And the great thing about this film is that it's funny. It's entertaining. So it's not even like a film, it doesn't feel like work. You come in, you have a great freaking time, and you learn to not be ashamed of your body. And other people who might not bleed learn that there's nothing fucking wrong with our bodies. So I think that that's really the important part, that everyone needs to see this film. And I think it's really important that we get the word out that this is not a female film. This is a people film. It's a human film. Because everybody, in the comedians say in the film, which is one of the best lines in it, she goes, everybody's here because someone didn't have a period. So it's so everybody owes a bleeder some things. So you might as well just come, be a part of the audience, and get on board for the movement of the film.
Well said. Anusha, Madeleine, are you still involved in this movement of yours?
Yeah. And really quick to add on to what Amanda said, I think something you also see in the film is this, especially in the policy realm, is having conversations with people who may not necessarily know much about menstruation, right? Especially, there was several scenes in the film where I was calling male lawmakers in Michigan, informing them about our lobby day that we were planning together, and different events that we had. And, a lot of it is just bringing up the conversation again and again, and really normalizing it. Because honestly, if the lawmakers are not willing to discuss topics like menstruation, how do we expect them to, pass policies that benefit menstruators and pass equitable policies, right? Without so destigmatizing this issue is so important. But to your question, yes, I'm very involved still in the menstrual movement and advocating for it. So I'm currently a medical student, and so pretty busy with that. But also, recently I passed the first menstrual equity resolution through the Ohio State Medical Association, which is exciting. So excited about that. And really bringing in, the medical world more into my advocacy. And we've also been in Ohio, working on passing legislation for free period products and prisons for incarcerated menstruators, and also in schools for students. And so we've currently been working on getting a co-sponsor for that legislation. So there's a lot of work on the ground that I'm still involved with. So
terrific. Madeleine, last word.
Yeah, so a few things. One, I decided to start an Instagram page called Power and Period Petitioning, in which I educate people on how to file their own refund petitions to protest the tampon tax in their various states. So it has templates, videos, interactive photos in which people can learn how to protest the tax on their own. And a part of that is destigmatizing the fact you don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to, have a PhD. You just have to be a person with passion to make a real change. And so that's something that a message I'm really trying to emphasize. Secondly, I have applied to law school, now deciding where to go to law school because I do plan on working in impact litigation in this realm. I want to be one of those lawyers who is trying to bolster positive reproductive justice and menstrual justice efforts and to tear down these discriminatory laws that deal with gendered healthcare. And then I would say the third thing I have done is really continue to help destigmatize the message by talking about it at school. I'm currently a Master of Public Health student, so making sure all my papers are about this, projects I have are about this, different presentations with different clubs and things like that. I go back to my undergrad and also talk about at different club meetings and speak about menstrual justice, the tampon tax, what people can do. And then in the future, this summer, I'm collaborating with the Endometriosis Foundation of America. And I'm going to do some work in the policy and education realm there as well.
Wow, most excellent. Well, that's all the time I actually have with you ladies. I mean, we could go on for another hour, but then it becomes a TED Talk or something like that. So thank you very much, everyone, for speaking to us about Periodical. It is a wonderful and it is a fun documentary, I do have to admit. And I'm here in California and I already see a lot of changes going on both through the sales tax and through free period products here. So thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you so much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.